Raymond Holsey and his wife operate a dress shop in Altus, Oklahoma, a modest store where one day isn't really much different from the next. But although the days here are pretty much the same, certain dates have specific meanings, like September 16th, for example. For on this day 44 years ago, former war bomber pilot Ray Holsey had to crash land his B-17 on a beach in New Guinea, an incident that gained him national recognition in what was America's most popular picture magazine.
I could tell that the tide was had just gone out, and you know, beach tide is freshly out is very hard. So I just dropped the gear and set it on the beach, and then guided it up above the water line, and we came to a halt. The natives were not really too concerned about them because I didn't see any weapons or spears, and they appeared to be friendly, and they were.
Holsey and his crew spent 17 days on that beach, building a runway, surviving on a diet of native fruits and vegetables. But finally, the runway was ready, and so was Holsey, to resolve the situation one way or the other.
I wasn't sure that it was going to fly. I felt like it would. As I was going down the runway, I knew I was going to get it further enough out in the water to where I wouldn't have to fool with it anymore, at least. When it came off the ground, the right wingtip just tipped the white caps, and then she flew.
And friends, the tale of this seemingly ordinary clothes merchant from Altus, who eventually left the Southwest Pacific with more bombing missions on his record than any other pilot there. 74. Alan Berg, Channel 6 News.
Today from Australia, we present Captain Raymond E. Holsey of Altus, Oklahoma, who holds the outstanding record of 51 bombing missions against the Japanese.
He was a highly decorated bomber pilot, was reported by the national media. Confident, cocksure Ray Holsey was a local boy who made good.
Ray was confident in what he was doing. He really was. You have to be.
That confidence helped him fly a B-17 back to an Allied base, out of enemy territory, off a handmade runway, on a thin strip of sand.
I wasn't sure that it was going to fly. I felt like it would. When it came off the ground, the right wingtip just tipped the caps, and then she flew.
This is a man friends and relatives gathered to remember and to lay to rest. A man who truly believed in time-worn phrases like God and country.
I remember one time I was playing golf on the golf in the Blue Retreat at the Altus Air Force Base. And he stopped and stood at attention. And the young fellow was playing with us, and he says, "Mr. Holsey, did you have to do that?" He says, "No, I consider it a privilege."
During the burial, the chaplain told Holsey's widow that no greater honor could be presented to a fallen comrade than the symbol of our country, our flag. Ray Holsey probably would have appreciated that sentiment.
It was his life. The Air Force was his life, really. In fact, I've heard him say if and when he was ready to go, he'd like to be either on the 18th green and making the final shot airplane.
Holsey died when he crashed a single-engine Cessna last Friday morning.
You want me to look or be working?
Working.
Just so I have some way to edit this together.
Go ahead and don't change position or anything for a bit here. We'll lay the piece together to make it. I mean, go ahead and move, and I'm saying neither one of you like get out of your chair.
I don't know whether you want me to be still or...
All right.
Okay.
This Fox Jack there.
Whenever he gets ready,
They just go ahead like I'm. Right, I think.
Today from Australia, we present Captain Raymond E. Holsey of Athens, Oklahoma, who holds the outstanding record of 51 bombing missions against the Japanese. Just a few days ago, our contested Bismarck Sea, his flying fortress was set ablaze 350 miles from home base, and 5 of his crew were wounded. But he came in with all hands safe, with a charged coffin of his plane. Part of the wings and all burned out. How did you do it, Ray?
Well, my co-pilot, Lieutenant Brian Reeves, and the crew fought the fire.
But here's what happened.
We were out here in New Britain making our first run on a big fat transport. I found zero, 12 or 14. But I thought, well, what the heck, we'll break up the formation and give her a go. Just as we got the bombs away, one of the nips got in 2 or 3 good birds. First, I smelled smoke. Then the engineer opened the door into the bomb bay compartment, and the plane I took his head off. They had hit the hydraulic fluid line, and it had thrown burning oil all over the bomb bay.
Were you scared?
Boy, you can say that again. We couldn't jump over that convoy. The nips would have shot us clean out of my chute. So I told Charlie the next ship that I'd try crash landing on a little island. He followed me down, giving me encouragement all the time. But once he made me kind of sore. I told him it's getting kind of hot in here, Charlie, and he came back with that old dog. Yeah, it looks a little warm in there. We were down 300 feet when the boy beat the fire out with a CO2 bottle and there went a flying suit. That's about all.
I see, nothing to it. But the birds tell me you landed with nothing but fresh air between the nose and tail.
He did look kind of bad, but those old B-17s can never take it.
The communique yesterday says another 8-ship convoy has been sighted approaching Wwii and hit. Do you think the nips will keep coming in?
Oh, sure, but we'll keep knocking them off just as long as we can. Just give us a ship, that's all.
Thank you, Captain Raymond E. Holsey. This is George L. Morad in Australia. I return you to CBS in New York.
I guess you lost a lot of people you knew in World War II.
Oh, yeah. See, there was 19 of them went to the Philippines. And I don't think but about 3 of 19 got out.
Including yourself?
No, I wasn't in the Philippines.
Oh, okay. All right.
But December 31, 86, life memberships are 1,500. For those over 65, 1,000. So I'm just going to send them $1,000 for a life membership. And it's about $200 a year, I think. I know I'll live another 5 years. Yeah, I got to lay this out here. Get that in the mail this afternoon.
while he's doing that, how do you feel when you go up, you're being shot at?
Well, it was kind of funny, in as much as we went on a reconnaissance mission. Of course, our main objective was looking for this convoy. After that first one went by, well then, I mean, we came awake then.
Mm-hmm.
And shit, nobody got hurt, so what the hell?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you had to live with that philosophy, or you'd like a lot of them did. There was some, at the same time we went to New Caledonia to look for this convoy, there's some guys went to Midway Island, 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii. Because the Japanese had this humongous task force and it had split. See, the Midway battle then took place the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of June of 42.
Were you involved in that?
No.
All right, so you're in New Caledonia then for a bit, and then were you involved in this here? So
I don't know about those. Well, I flew 3 or 4 missions during the course of the 3 days of the RCW. Give you anything that they had to eat, they'd share it with you.
I was around the truck once.
Yeah.
How many of y'all were there on the beach then?
Well, I had a full crew when I landed there, but then when they brought them on that afternoon, they come down and pick me up, and I went to Fort Worthy. And then the next day, it took about 2 days to offload that. Yeah, they were there about 4 or 5 days. See, we had to take that Pierce blank steel that the ship caught 1 or 2 pieces. Maybe some of the larger boats could haul 3. And we were a good half a mile out to sea. So he couldn't make more than 3 trips a day, maybe. 50-gallon drums of fuel, 200 gallons.
How'd you get the fuel on the airplane?
Floated it ashore.
Okay, but I mean, did you have to take?
We took it. I got a siphon hose off of the boat and a bucket. I guess it was about a 5-gallon can, and we would be reasonably safe for it's catching fire.
Yeah. Twist tobacco,
straw, and they run that straw in the little hole in the coconut, and they shake it around and get that on that straw. Then they lick that straw.
Yeah. They didn't like the Japanese much.
Oh no, they were afraid of the Japanese.
The Japanese tortured some.
Well, they've been stories that.
Did you ever worry about if you went down, spending time in one of those Japanese training camps?
No. I figured if I went down, they had to catch me first.
Yeah.
That is a great picture.
Barry, we're still up here shooting. We still have about an hour left to shoot, which isn't going to put us back until about 4:30. Yep.
Time in the Air Force.
Did you ever worry about if you went down, spending time in one of these training camps?
No. I figured if I went down, they had to catch me first.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened on September the 16th. How did you guys end up on a beach in New Guinea?
Well, we had been out on a bombing mission, and we got involved with quite a bit of weather coming back into the base, and we'd gone out to maximum range anyway. And when we got back to the base, a little typhoon had moved in, and the weather, something terrible. and no visibility, no nav aids, and I made 3 passes at the runway, and we could never see the ground, and I went down less than 20 feet, and with the rain that we had, probably at the rate of 4 inches an hour, we just couldn't find the runway, and I was getting low of fuel, and the red lights were on, which indicates that oil tanks is low, and so it didn't look like the weather was going to let up, and I didn't want to ditch. And we had an approved ditching area down at Hood Point, which is about 75 miles east of Port Moresby, and went down there, and there was the beach, and it was just in daylight by this time. And we had run out of the weather just a few miles back, which that had me some concern for that, because I didn't know what the weather was going to be like when we try to find the beach. And at the last second, I could tell that the tide had just gone out. And you know, beach sand, when the tide is freshly out, is very hard. So I just set it on the beach, and then guided it up above the water line, and we came to a halt.
And tell me, what were you thinking about as you landed? Any type of worries, the trees, the sand?
I didn't know exactly how close the coconut trees came up to the beach, but in the dim light, I could see it looked like I had plenty of clearance, and all I was thinking about is I knew I had maybe 10 more minutes of fuel at the most, maybe not even that much, and I just wanted to get the airplane and the crew on the ground.
After you landed, what happened then? Did rush out immediately, or did you find them? Did they find you? Or?
Well, no, they laid back for it was a couple of hours. You'd see them off in the bush, kind of looking us over, but they didn't come out. I had the thought, we knew that they were Japanese patrols and not too far away, but after we had been there a little while and hadn't seen anything of any Japanese patrol, well, evidently there's none immediately nearby, and so we kind of relaxed on that point and got about the business of trying to raise the base on our radio, on the CW. And that went an hour or so before we ever were able to. Finally, one of the boys had to climb a coconut tree and string up a outside antenna before we could reach the base. And we made contact with the base and told them where we were and what the situation was. They said stand by, and in 2.5 hours or so, an Australian pilot in a little Tiger Moth showed up and said that I was supposed to go back to Port Moresby with him and Air Force headquarters, which I went back to 5th Air Force headquarters and told them what had happened and what the situation was, and then the decision was made that first we were going to sit down and dismantle the aircraft and bring it back and use it for spare parts. And with a little persuasion, General Whitehead finally decided that, well, if the airplane could be flown off, why, that would be the way to go. So they loaded up a little Australian boat with 45 tons of pierce plank steel, and we went down to Hood Point, and the natives, of course, being curious as they are, when they came in near the shore about a half mile off, why, of course, they came out in their outrigger canoes, and they'd sent an Australian officer with me that could speak the dialect, and he explained to them they needed to go back to shore and get all their friends that had boats and come out, and we had something for them to transport to the shore, and they'd get paid for it, and of course that rounded up, I don't know how many, 30 or 40, 20 or 30, I don't know how many outrigger canoes, and they could carry from 1 to 3 pieces apiece at a time of this Pierce plank steel, and that's the way we ferried it into shore.
Mm-hmm. And what type of diet, when you were over there, what did you eat?
Just coconuts, bananas, tomatoes, some sweet potatoes, and it was reasonably scarce for the first 2 weeks. We didn't have too much food, and then the natives started getting it from the last 3 or 4 days we were there. They were getting it from some village quite a ways away that had had a better crop than they had, and so the diet picked up a little bit. Although laying at Pierce plank steel, and over a period of, I guess, 18 days we were there, I went from 169 pounds to 147, and of course we worked daylight till dark, and of course we were right on the equator. It was pretty warm, and I just lost a lot of weight.
Tell me about those grass skirts. When did you start wearing those?
That is strictly just for a gag. I think my flight engineer bought those grass skirts, or got them from the natives there, and we just had them in the airplane, and when we got back to Australia, he talked us into putting those grass skirts on to get out of the airplane back at the home base. It was just for fun. Those grass skirts don't smell very good. You really don't want to wear one.
When you surprised some people when you showed up back in Australia?
Yeah, we got, of course, my outfit back in Australia hadn't been told where we were. And as far as they knew, we just had disappeared that night and went down someplace. And got back into Australia over our base about 5 o'clock when everyone was lining up for the mess hall, and I buzzed the mess hall 2 or 3 times, and then the jeeps and trucks and whatnot, when they recognized the tail number of the aircraft, began to fan out toward the airstrip, and then I went around and landed, and we had a little reunion.
The photographer from Life that was out there on the island, was he sort of by the conditions? What was it like working with him?
Well, with the Life photographer?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what his experience had been in the past, but he heard just from the being over in an Australia, and he heard the pilot talk about that he had flown down to where this B-17 was on the beach, and he asked him about taking him down there. And we'd been down there a couple of weeks he showed up. And one day, here came the Tiger Moth, and he landed, and this guy gets out with all of his equipment, and turned out to be just a super nice little guy. But as soon as he got, first thing he wanted was something to eat. And of course, food, and we asked him why he hadn't brought something with him for us. But he was a super guy. I'd like very much to talk with him again, if he's still alive. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Have out of everything that's down there, what impressed the natives the most, do you think?
Well, the natives they have just a child's mentality. They're at that time, their life expectancy, I think, was about 27 years, and they had a very simple life. They were not anyways near along as the American Indians were back in the olden days. They were much more primitive, much more primitive. Matter of fact, there was lots of talk about various sections of New Guinea that had people that were still headhunters, even in those days. They were not a very advanced.
When they came across the beach, were you wondering whether they were those headhunters or whether they were friendly?
Well, of course, they're pretty small, and one that's really tall is maybe a little over 4 feet. So we were not really too concerned about them because I didn't see any weapons or spears, and they appeared to be friendly, and they were. You know, to get the airplane back into position, take off so that we could lay the matting out in front of it. I got 250-foot ropes off of the ship, and we tied those to the struts, and then we rounded up the natives throughout the local area, and we had something like 700 around. At the time, we were in the process of moving it back into position to take off, and you taught them what heave-ho was, and that meant, you know, to get all set, and then to pull when it said ho. And once they got on, we'd move the airplane an inch sometimes. Maybe we'd move it 2 or 3 inches sometime. But that took a lot of work and several days, and you had the natives pulling on the ropes and some lifting and pushing on the airplane, and they did an outstanding job for it. Without them, we could have never got the airplane back into position to take off.
A lot of curiosity on the part of the natives about the airplane.
Oh yes, they're very curious. They're like I say, they have a child's mentality, and they amuse themselves by making jokes among themselves in their dialect, which we didn't know what they were talking about, but they do a lot of laughing, and they have a good time.
And when you took off, I understand it was a little close call. Weren't quite sure whether or not you were going to get up and out.
That's right. It wasn't. I wasn't sure that it was going to fly. I felt like it would. As I was going down the run, I was going to get it further enough out in the water to where I wouldn't have to fool with it anymore, at least. And the technique of a short field takeoff in the B-17 was, at the time you start your roll, you start the flaps down, and when you break ground, well, stop the movement of the flaps. When it came off the ground, why, the right wing stalled out for just a fraction, and the gear was already coming up, and the right wing tip just tipped the white caps, and then she flew.
Whatever happened to the Frank Buck?
Well, about within a month or a little less after I got it off the beach, another crew and they had landed at Arn Range, and another aircraft came in that had been shot up, and they had a tire out, and when they landed, well, they ground looped and ground looped the Frank Buck, and they both burned up.
What about that evening?
Well, it was during the last day of the Bismarck Sea battle, which took place out in the Bismarck Sea. We had jumped this Japanese convoy of about 22 ships, and we'd been working on them for 3 days. And at the end of the 3rd day, well, we had sunk all the ships, and on the last bomb run I made, I got set on fire by a Japanese fighter. Had chunked a 20-millimeter cannon shell into a hydraulic tank in the front end of the bomb bay, and set us on fire. And we went through quite a procedure of getting that out. It burned, literally destroyed the aircraft, because when we landed it, it was just pushed over in the jungle and was never attempted to be repaired, because it had burned out. The whole underneath belly of the aircraft was burned out, and even the soundproofing, where the fire worked its way out of the bomb bay and into the cockpit, kept on. And those are not moth holes there. Those are real fire holes that where the soundproofing in the aircraft burned and fell down on my cap. And that's a kind of a keepsake relic, I guess.
Feel in danger during that flight?
Well, the only thing I was concerned about, I knew it was burning, and knew that there was some fuel lines involved, although they were not supposed to burn, and the fuel tanks are not supposed to burn, but the fire was quite persistent, and I was a little concerned that a fuel tank could explode. All we could do is just fight the fire inside the aircraft, and by the time we got it out, my intentions were, if the fire hadn't gone out when it did, I was going to ditch again on Rook Island, which is just a uninhabited little island out in the sea, which I don't know if I would have survived that or not, because we'd have been right close to the Japanese, but Fortunately, the fire went out, and of course I'd lost my hydraulic fluid, and you can't climb a B-17 without you can open the cowl flaps, and with no hydraulic pressure we couldn't open the cowl flaps, so I had to fly around the east end of the Owen Stanley Range to get back to Port Moresby, and that delayed me about an hour and a half getting home. And when I called in and said that I needed the meat can, that I had 8 wounded aboard. There's 9 of us aboard. Everybody had either been shot or burned except myself. And they said that to go back out to sea and hold that there was an air raid in progress. And I repeated again that I was going to land. I wanted 2 ambulances. And they said, well, there's bomb craters in the runway. And I said, understand, but I'm going to land. And told the crew, when I touch down, turn on the landing lights, and we'll see what the runway looks like. And there was 2 or 3 bomb craters that we dodged on the rollout. And fortunately, at Port Moresby, the east end of the field is a little higher, and of course, airplane rolled to a stop, and I turned it perpendicular to the runway, and we got out.
Okay.
And that is a Luxembourg cap. Luxembourg, and know that was the Ichiban #1 best cap that you could possibly buy. See, that cap now is 40, well, about that was 1941. Well, I came home in the summer of 43 and it had those holes in it, and that wouldn't look just exactly right to walk around with the cap that is truly, let's say, a 100 mission cap. Yeah, that was strictly a 100 mission class. That's right.
Were you commander out here at Altus?
No, I was here 58 to 61. The time I was here, I was the division director of operations at 816th Air Division. A SAC unit here, which was, we built the base at Shepherd, put the SAC unit there, had the SAC unit here. One morning, General May walked in there and said, gave me an envelope and said, have you delivered the report to the White House yet? And it was just a little bit before 7. I said, no, sir, it'll be just a few minutes. We'll be going down with it, or I'll be sending it down. He said, anybody else? And he said, eyes on President Kennedy on this envelope. So I took it and went down to the White House and went into the communications room. We're an eyes-only message from General May for the President. And he said, he's indisposed right now. And then here comes this voice out of the back. I'm right back here. Send him on. Life magazine, dated January the 4th, 1943, that covered the story of my landing on the beach. There's the aircraft sitting on the beach. Here we are on the beach, standing on the horizontal of the aircraft with our grass skirts on. This is myself, Sergeant Young, the flight engineer, Lieutenant Ryan, the co-pilot, and Lieutenant Crockett, my navigator. Sergeant Young is a retired Baptist minister now down in Texas, and Crockett is an orthodontist in Riverside, California, and Lieutenant Ryan was shot down later on during World War II. Picture there with the natives with the vegetables in their packs on their back. The Australian officer there with them is Lieutenant Johnson, that was a great help to us in handling the natives because he could speak the dialect. And we're relaxing here the day or two before we got off. With the natives had brought us some fruit, and here I was just playing with the natives to kind of shoot the Tommy gun and let them hear it. And here's one of the boys talking to the natives. We decided we needed some more coconuts, and You can see the airplane in the background, and one of the boys got a native to climb the tree to get us some more coconuts, and then after we got the coconuts down, well, I was opening them up here. And one day we took a safari on the outrigger canoe down to see the villages. They built their houses out of water so they'd be protected from their enemies at night. And this is just a shot of the aircraft sitting on the beach, and you can see the natives in their boats, outriggers out here. This was my guard here. He'd show up every morning and stay right aft all day long, and he was completely responsible not to let anyone get in the aircraft. And this is Sergeant Young standing down at the end of the matting looking back toward the aircraft. We had 700 feet of steel, and then at the end of that we had 220 feet of beach sand to take off on. We are, the morning that we took off, we're pulling the props through. That's Lieutenant Johnson was helping me, and we pulled them through about 12 blades. This is the takeoff roll, and we were probably doing 40 to 60 miles an hour there. This picture here is a little misleading in as much as like that I had just taken off, but in fact I took off the opposite direction, and this picture when I came back across and buzzed the area that I'd taken off from. You can see one patch in here where the left main gear wanted to fly a fraction before the other did.
Were you worried about sharks and giant rays?
Not really, because I wasn't going to get out in the water further enough before we'd get to take a chance on getting into the giant rays. And now I don't know really if there's any pythons out there or not. I didn't see the natives bring any in, but I feel sure if there'd been any out there, they'd probably brought them in. Yeah. Me over there. And that's Sergeant Young. And that's Jack Ryan. And this is Crockett.
You recognize them by scent?
Oh, yeah, they all smelled alike. Bad.
Oh, okay.
See, you can see the tire track. Now this main gear, and that's the tail wheel, and that's the right main gear. And they were still rolling heavy on the ground. See, they had the aircraft in a three-point position for takeoff and the flaps were coming down until you hit the point where you were going to fly. Jam the stick all the way forward and all the way back, and when you come back that time is when you fly, or you go in the drain. The guy that I'd really like to get a hold of, and he might very well still be alive, would be this Lieutenant Johnson, the Australian who was down there with us. It'd be real, because he was in his late 20s then, so he could very well still be alive. And of course, when we took off, going back to Port Moresby here, I'd run the aircraft up several times, and it burned up quite a bit of fuel. I wasn't really loaded with fuel when we took off, so I went straight to Port Moresby, landed, and we took on 1,640 gallons of fuel, and we had the capacity to hold 1,660. When I got back to Port Moresby and crew was getting the aircraft serviced up, I went down to see Major Gideon, who was the ops type. And the ops was in a long fly tent. And I talked to him a little bit, and he said, well, he had to go someplace. And there was a GI cot there, so I laid down on it on my stomach. And after having been out in that sun for nearly 3 weeks, I just had on a pair of GI pants. I was barefooted and no shirt. And I was laying down on this GI cot, and I just went sound asleep, just like that. Well, the next thing I knew, something whacked me across the fanny. I mean, it brought me up quick. And in that dark kind of tent, where it was kind of dark in there, I heard somebody say, Red, I've told you to keep these out of the ops tent. And Major Gideon spoke up and said, General, that ain't no native. That's one of your pilots.
What were your impressions of the man?
Well, Ray is a fine a friend as anyone. He was considerate of people, helpful, and he's just one of those guys that you like when you see him, when you meet him.
He's a pretty good pilot, too.
Oh, he's a great pilot. I've flown with him since he's been out of the Air Force times, and I wish I could fly as well. I'm not flying anymore, but I wish I could fly as well as Ray does.
During the war, when you look at pictures of him, you talk about him, it seemed like he was a fairly confident man during that period.
Ray was confident in what he was doing. He really was. You have to be, and you develop that through your training and flying different missions, and you gain that confidence when you do that.
This was airplanes.
Oh, Brady, he thought there wasn't anything else.
So I guess if there was a way, if you could choose your way to go, that his would be in an airplane.
I think that Ray mentioned one time 3 ways he would like to go when he had to go, and that was one of them. One of them was knocking in a long putt on the 18th hole and be sure he saw it go in. And there's one more, I don't remember exactly what it was, but Ray was, he lived life fully, and well, you can see, I was looking this morning over every civic organization that he belonged to here in Altus, and they has to have the people's interest at heart, work like he did.
How do you think he wants to be remembered?
Just as a good citizen of America. He was one of the, I think, the most patriotic man I've ever met. I remember one time I was up on the golf course in the Blue Retreat at the Altus Air Force Base, and he stopped and stood at attention, and the young fellow was playing with us, and he says, "Mr. Holsey, did you have to do that?" He says, "No, I considered it." So that tells you a lot about the man right there.
Well, tell me your impressions of this man when you met him. What did you think about Mr. Holsey as you got to know him?
He was just an outstanding gentleman. He was the kind of person that's, when he told you he was going to do something, you could count 100% on it that he would do it. I met Ray Holsey over on Guam in the summer of 1955, and we attended the same Masonic functions over there, and we were both on the staff of 3rd Air Division, which was Strategic Air Command's outpost on Guam at that time.
So you're a pretty respected pilot?
You bet he was. I don't know of a better pilot that I ever flew with in my life.
Mm-hmm. When you say that, excuse me just a minute.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. when you say that he was a good pilot, what do you mean? What are the qualities that a good pilot has?
Well, some of the qualities of a good pilot, the first is a good pre-flight of the aircraft, knowing the airplane well, knowing how to handle it, knowing what to do before the situation happens or before an incident occurs. And in emergencies, he is way far and beyond the emergency itself.
This is a man that was confident of his airplane.
Exactly right. Precisely right. I would fly with him anywhere, anytime.
Did he ever describe to you what flying, what the attraction was?
I don't believe he could tell you himself what the attraction was. It was just natural. He loved to fly. That was it. Like some people love to ride horses or ride motorcycles or drive fast cars. He liked to fly airplanes.
How did you and Ray become friends?
Ray and I were freshmen at Southwestern State College in Weatherford in 1937. And we both had endeavors up there. We were getting an education, and we were both working our way through school. Ray was janitor down at the Kane Hotel, and I was janitor at the gas office. So we had a lot in common those early years in college.
What type of man was unloving, or?
Ray was a good man. In my description, he's 100 proof. You could believe what he said, and he meant everything that he said. And he was a benefit to any community and a great family man.
And he loved flying, evidently.
Well, I think flying and golf and hunting were his activities, and he loved them all about equally.
Mm-hmm. Did he ever describe to you the attraction of flying, why he liked it?
Well, he explained that it was the only way to go. That if you wanted to get up and be close to the Heavenly Father, why, you could do it in an airplane and still be a human being. And he liked the altitudes, he liked the of the airplane, and he liked the speed in which you could get from one place to another.
If a man has to go, do you think this was an appropriate way for him to go in an airplane?
If he had a choice to go at this time, I think it would be in this regard.
And was this a pretty patriotic man?
My goodness, yes. He was our #1 citizen here in Aldous, Oklahoma. A great supporter of the air base, a great supporter of our freedom as a way of life.
This afternoon, from the rest body which was toiled through many years, knowing that we commit to the earth that which is of the earth. The Bible promises us that one day death will be no more. We're going for that day. But until then, we live in anticipation of that time when we too shall miss the cares of life and take up the joys of life eternal. Our hearts still cling to this body because we've got so many memories. We don't understand how there's no higher honor that a nation can give that of a fallen great man. Symbol.
I'm Alan Berg. One of Southwest Oklahoma's most distinguished World War II veterans was buried today.